Before the NBA was a three-point shooting contest, before spacing and switchability dominated every scouting report, there was the power forward. It was the engine room of every great team. Not flashy, not glamorous, but essential. If centers were the towers and guards were the tacticians, then the power forward were their warriors in the trenches. They battled, they bled, and more often than not, they won. In the 80s and 90s, the league was filled with legendary fours who defined toughness. Karl Malone, the mailman, delivered night after night with brutal force and unrelenting consistency. He scored over 36,000 points, most of them coming from bullying defenders in the post, using his strength like a wrecking ball in transition and the half court. Tim Duncan, perhaps the most humble superstar in NBA history, turned the power forward position into an art form. No theatrics, no flash, just ruthless efficiency. The bank shot, the quiet footwork, the impossible to rush tempo. 5 rings, 2 MVPs, 15 all-defense selections. He was the system. His presence on the court elevated everyone around him. And that, in many ways, is what a power forward was meant to be. Kevin Garnett was the emotional opposite. A whirlwind of passion, intensity, and raw energy. He screamed, he sweat, he celebrated every rebound like it was a game winner. But don't let the fire fool you. He had finesse too. He could knock down mid-range shots, guard every position, and pass with the precision of a point guard. Garnett wasn't just a power forward. He was a cultural movement. He made it cool to defend. He made it cool to be unselfish. And in 2008, he anchored the Celtics to a championship with pure grit. Chris Webber brought flash and intelligence to the role. A brilliant passer from the elbow, a silky scorer, and the heart of the greatest team that never was. In Sacramento, he was the first modern four to truly blend guard-like vision with big man power. Rasheed Wallace, the most underrated of them all, a unicorn before the term existed. Elite post moves, tough as nails defense, and range. He was draining threes when most fours weren't allowed to even think about it. You wanted a dog in the fight? Sheed was your guy. These players embodied the power forward role. It wasn't just about scoring. It was about setting the tone, diving for loose balls, holding teammates accountable, protecting the paint, setting hard screens. The four was the enforcer, the leader, and sometimes the only guy willing to go to war every single night. In a league built on roles, the power forward had a sacred one. It was the bridge between the finesse of the perimeter and the brutality of the paint, the perfect balance of touch and toughness. They weren't sidekicks, they were pillars. And then came Dirk. He didn't break the mold, he reshaped it. A 7-footer with a jumper so pure, you couldn't guard it even if you knew it was coming. He wasn't a bruiser, he wasn't a post-up monster, but he was a killer. A finals MVP who dropped 26 on your best defender and made it look easy. Dirk's rise signaled something powerful. The position was evolving, and soon it would never be the same. In the early 2010s, a quiet revolution began in the NBA, one that would change the game forever. It didn't start with a blockbuster trade or a rule change. It started with numbers. Front offices led by executives like Daryl Morey in Houston began to look beyond what the eye could see. They analyzed efficiency. They asked a simple question: what are the most valuable shots in basketball? The answer? Threes, layups, free throws. Everything else, especially those beautiful post-up fadeaways and elbow jumpers, were labeled as inefficient. And guess what most power forwards were thinking? Elbow jumpers, mid-range bank shots, post-up hooks. In the eyes of the new NBA, those were dinosaurs. The classic power forward game, grind it out, back to the basket, high post creation, was suddenly bad basketball. Players who had made a living punishing mismatches in the paint now found themselves watching from the bench. Coaches began to shrink rotation minutes for slow-footed bigs, and the 4 spot was increasingly handed to stretch shooters and mobile wings. This wasn't just a stylistic shift, it was a philosophical war. On one side, tradition, toughness, tactics built on decades of muscle memory. On the other, math, speed, efficiency, and the numbers won. The Spurs were one of the first to fully adapt. Instead of relying on brute force at the 4, they used vision and movement. Boris Diaw, a point guard, became the prototype. He wasn't a bruiser, he was a playmaker, and it worked. In 2014, the Spurs dismantled the Miami Heat in the finals with surgical precision, without a traditional power forward in sight. Even stars weren't immune. Carmelo Anthony, once the NBA scoring champ, was suddenly inefficient. LaMarcus Aldridge, one of the best post scorers of his era, had to develop a three-point shot just to stay relevant. Players like David Lee, Carlos Boozer, and Zach Randolph, once all-stars, saw their roles vanish almost overnight. The league had spoken. Stretch or die. Defend every position or sit. Be able to switch, shoot, or both. That meant no more hiding in the paint. No more sagging off shooters. No more bullying 6'8" forwards with your back to the basket. You had to move. You had to switch. You had to shoot. For the power forward, it was death by evolution. Not with a bang, but with a spacing chart. The new fours weren't tougher, they weren't stronger, but they fit the system. They stayed in the corners, opened up driving lanes, and helped the analytics model work. The irony? Some of them wouldn't have lasted a second in the old NBA. But in the new game, they were kings. Slowly, the classic power forward faded into history. First, the mid-range disappeared, then the post-up, then the role itself. The power forward didn't retire. It got rebranded. And in the process, everything that made the position special was lost. By 2015, the old game wasn't just fading, it was being erased, and the Golden State Warriors were holding the eraser. This team didn't just win, they rewrote the blueprint. Gone were the days of two bigs clogging the lane, one power forward banging in the post. The Warriors introduced a radical idea. What if we didn't play one at all? Enter the death lineup. No traditional power forward, no center in the classical sense, just 5 players who could pass, shoot, switch, and space. At the heart of it all, Draymond Green. Draymond wasn't tall, he wasn't explosive, he wasn't a scorer, but he could do everything else. He ran the offense like a point guard. He defended like a madman. He was the 6'6" center who broke the laws of basketball physics. In any other era, Draymond wouldn't even be considered a power forward. But here, he became the blueprint. He redefined what toughness and versatility looked like. He made it cool to be small and switchable. He made it lethal to abandon the post entirely. The Warriors didn't just win with this style, they dominated. They ran big men off the court, forced mismatches, turned size into a weakness. Teams like the Cavs, Rockets, and even the Spurs had to adapt or die. You couldn't beat the Warriors by playing traditional basketball. You had to fight fire with fire. Suddenly every team in the NBA wanted their own Draymond. Every team started hunting for a stretch 4 who could shoot threes and defend every position. The back-to-the-basket bruiser was now a liability, a relic. Coaches didn't just shift styles, they benched legends. Zach Randolph, David Lee, Kenneth Farid, all once key starters, now glued to the bench because they couldn't shoot threes or guard on the perimeter. In the Warriors' world, power forwards didn't need footwork. They needed foot speed. They didn't need touch, they needed IQ. And above all, they needed range. What the Warriors did was more than tactical. It was philosophical. They took the idea of a power forward, an identity rooted in toughness and interior dominance, and turned it into a fluid concept. A positionless cog and a free-flowing machine. It's not about size, it's about skill. That single quote was the death sentence for every traditional 4 in the league. And the impact was immediate. In just a few years, the entire NBA reshaped itself in Golden State's image. 5-out lineups became the norm. Post touches were slashed in half. The power forward, once the pillar of any serious contender, became optional, replaceable, disposable. Even the stars who could still dominate inside had to change. Blake Griffin started shooting threes. Kevin Love abandoned the post and drifted to the arc. Not because they wanted to, but because they had to. The Warriors didn't just win titles, they reprogrammed basketball, and in doing so, they buried the traditional power forward 6 feet under. Just when it seemed like the power forward had been deleted from the NBA's DNA, few players refused to go extinct. They didn't cling to the past, they adapted, and in doing so, they became something else entirely. These weren't your dad's power forwards, they didn't live in the paint, they didn't demand post-ups, they didn't play with their back to the basket. Instead, they stretched the floor, switched on defense, initiated fast breaks, and most importantly, they survived the purge. Anthony Davis was the prototype of the evolved four, a player with the body of a center, the handles of a guard, and the shooting range of a wing. He wasn't just a shot blocker, he was a defensive ecosystem. On offense, he could stretch the floor or roll hard to the rim. AD showed that the modern four didn't need to give up dominance, they just needed to repackage it. Then came Giannis Antetokounmpo, a Greek freak in every sense. He didn't just survive the death of the power forward, he transcended it. Giannis played the four, but he runs the offense like a point guard. He crashed the glass like a center. He guards every position like a wing, and he attacks the rim like a heat-seeking missile. No post-ups, no finesse, just pure unfiltered dominance. In the era of threes and spacing, Giannis bent the rules. He made paint scoring fashionable again by doing it differently. Not through slow backdowns, but through speed, force, and chaos. Pascal Siakam wasn't even drafted as a star, but he became one by evolving. A blur in transition, a relentless defender, and a creator from the wing. He didn't need a post game, he had a transition game. He didn't need a hook shot, he had the spin move. In 2019, he helped lead the Raptors to a title by doing everything the modern four requires: running, switching, spacing, and attacking. And then there's Kevin Durant, a 7-footer who plays like a shooting guard. His height says power forward, but his game says unicorn. KD is the ultimate mismatch. Too tall for wings, too fast for bigs, too skilled for anyone. He doesn't operate in the post, he operates in space, and that's the essence of the modern game. These players aren't power forwards in the traditional sense. They are what came after. They took the raw materials, length, strength, agility, and rebuilt themselves for the new world. Old school power forwards were built for structure, set screens, run plays, control the paint. The new ones, they're built for chaos, positionless, relentless, adaptive. They're not asked to dominate the block. They're asked to cover ground, close out, switch, create mismatches, and survive in a system that no longer needs them, but still rewards those who can adapt. The traditional four may be gone, but from its ashes, a new breed was born. And just like that, the power forward as we knew it was gone. It didn't happen overnight, it happened quietly, with every corner three, with every switch-heavy defense, with every possession where the post-up was ignored. Slowly the game changed, until one day we looked up and realized the position had disappeared. The greats didn't vanish, they left footprints. Tim Duncan showed what leadership in silence looked like. Kevin Durant taught us intensity is a skill. Dirk Nowitzki bent the arc of the position toward finesse and range. Chris Webber, Rasheed Wallace, Charles Barkley all carved their identities into the hardwood. Today the players wearing the 4 on their stat sheet. They don't resemble these legends. They're faster, leaner, more perimeter-oriented. They train to switch, not post, to float, not anchor. And it's not wrong, it's just different. In chasing efficiency, the league sacrificed a bit of its soul. The elbow jumper gone, the mid-post fadeaway deemed obsolete, the double team in the paint rarely seen. What we lost was more than just a role. It was a personality, a brand of basketball built on resilience, grit, fundamentals. Today's game is faster, more skilled, more explosive, and yet, part of us still misses the old war horses. The guys who didn't want highlights, they wanted wins. Who didn't need the ball, just the battle. To the 4s who came before, they battled in the paint, spoke through actions, and left echoes on the floorboards. The game moved faster, the roles got blurred, but the rhythm still pulsed beneath every rebound, every box out, every screen. They were more than a position, they were the soul of the grind.